Welcome to Wildlife Outdoors with your host, Russell and Jose. If you have a passion for conservation of the outdoors, or you're enjoying a calming hike in the mountains, an exhilarating kayak trip on the river, feeling a fish on the end of your line, cooking on an open flame in a primitive campsite, or stalking big game, just waiting for the perfect shot, you're in the right place. So put on your boots and polarized sunglasses and come along for the ride.
Welcome back to another episode of Wildlife Outdoors. Today we got another exciting one for you. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about fire. And so we have on Steve Hawks from the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. So how you doing today, Steve?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me on today.
Of course. I'm excited for this one. So, unlike my counterpart Jose here, I really don't know anything about fire. Jose has a little bit of experience doing prescribed burns and stuff like that. But on our introductory call, when I spoke to you, it seems like you are quite the expert on fire. So, how long have you been dealing with fire for and in the studies of fire?
Yeah, my background is in the California Fire Service, and I spent a 30-year career with CAL FIRE, the state of California's fire department. And the first 24 years were in the field from firefighter to battalion chief, responding to emergencies of all types, and in particular wildfires. And then the last 6+ years, I worked underneath their Office of the State Fire Marshal and division called the Community Wildfire Preparedness and Mitigation. And there we really focused on programs that work directly with homeowners and communities in wildfire preparedness, from grant programs to fuel reduction projects, defensible space work, home hardening, building codes as some of the examples.
Oh, wow. So I'd say you have quite the experience in understanding exactly how fire works and how it affects areas, especially in the urban setting. So I guess one of the ways that I would like to start this episode is, um, are there any things that people are common misinterpretations of fire, or things that people think fire does that it actually doesn't do, or just understanding the behavior of fire in general?
Yeah, I think some of the misperception of fire is that it's a event or a phenomenon that happens out in your wildland areas, and that if I'm live in a community that I don't have a risk from wildfire. And so we've seen a lot of fires burn, particularly in the last decade plus, where they start out as wildland fires. And then because of drought conditions and a significant wind that occurs on that day of the fire, that fire start, the fire quickly gets pushed into the community and transitions from a wildfire to more of an urban fire, burning urban fuels. And in that context, those urban fuels are anything that can burn, from houses and other sheds and things that are on the property, fences, native vegetation, landscaping, vehicles. I mean, there's a lot of things that maybe you don't necessarily think could help ignite and spread the fire within the community and between houses. And so it's just that perception that the fire is really somebody else's problem. It's not my problem. It's never going to happen to me or my particular location. When in reality, when those conditions that I mentioned earlier, the drought, the strong winds, and then a ignition of a fire that's close by a community, when those occur, that fire can happen anywhere in the U.S. and at any time of the year.
I see. Do you have any statistics on how often structure fires or fires within subdivisions or urban areas are actually started in a wildland area or anything like that?
Yeah, of all the fires that start in your traditional wildland areas and then move into an urban environment and become that large destructive fire or urban conflagration, it's less than 1% of all wildfires that lead to over 95% of all structure loss during these type of fires. So, and then once a home ignites, there's greater than 90% chance that it will be completely destroyed. And so we really need to prevent, one, the fire from igniting under these extreme conditions, and then two, prepare communities to withstand that type of event, so that they can have a home, the homeowners can have a home to return to when this fire is over. These fires don't have to be as destructive as they have been if we collectively as a community take wildfire mitigation action seriously and implement the right mitigation um, uh, actions at the parcel level.
I
So
see.
what would be an example of those mitigation actions?
Yeah, so really, when we look at wildfire mitigation, it starts at the individual parcel level, but needs to be done at scale across entire communities to give the community at large the highest chance of withstanding these high intensity type fires. So at the property level, we think of two general areas: the area that surrounds the house and all the combustible items that are in there, from the edge of the house, the walls of the house, as well as attachments like decks, all the vegetation, the fences, the mulch, other buildings that are on the property, firewood that you have stored, and anything that's on our property as combustible can help spread the fire through the property to the edge of the house, where the flames and the radiant heat can actually touch the structure and ignite it. And then we also look at the house and how can we make it more resilient to withstand the things that are going to burn around the property, to withstand the flames, the radiant heat, and the embers from that wildfire. And so we look at all the components from the roof to the ground and everything in between. And where there's a vulnerability, we need to mitigate that to not be a vulnerability, because under these conditions, it takes a systems-based approach to wildfire mitigation, and even one maybe seemingly not big vulnerability can be exploited by these high-intensity fires, leading to the loss of the house.
So when you speak on things at the parcel level, whether it be fencing, things growing on the fence, yards and stuff like that, is that typically more of like a fuel reduction type of thing, or are you guys looking at different materials the fences could be built out of, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's both of those things, and it's really trying to reduce the exposure, is what the term that we use, the exposure. And so we look at all those things that are combustible, and we have three general ways of dealing with them. Is one, can we remove that item from the property altogether? If it's no longer on the property, it can't ignite, it can't lead to the ignition of the home. Can we move that item further away on the property if there's space available to do that, so that if it does ignite, it's not right next to the home and the flames and the radiant heat can in turn ignite the house? Or can we make the item more resilient or reduce its flammability? And as you just mentioned, that would an example of that would be a wood fence. That, and in many instances, those wood fences go right to the side of the house and attach directly to the side of the house. And so a fire burning on the wood fence has a clear path to travel right to the house and ignite it. But if we take that wood fence and replace at least the last 5 feet closest to the house with a non-combustible alternative, or even just remove a stretch of fence there closest to the house, then that fire will burn up to that point, and then self-extinguish, and will not be able to transition all the way to the house and ignite the house. So that's one of the ways that we can also deal with the reducing or the fuel reduction around the house.
So first 5 feet from the structure to other combustible items makes sense. How does that play into embers though? Because I know embers can travel a long distance and spark up new fires and things of that nature. Is there really very many instances of embers actually igniting a structure, or is that more just like starting other fuel areas and starting another wildfire?
Yeah, that's a great question. And embers are burning pieces of material that get lofted in the air from the heat of the fire, and then wind generally picks those embers up and can. The embers can travel very long distances with the wind, and when they fall out of the wind column, they can either directly or indirectly ignite the structure. And so, for direct ignition, it would be an ember landing on a combustible item on the structure itself and then igniting that item. It also could occur when an ember passes through like a vent on the house or other void space and travels inside the house, igniting a combustible item on the inside. So that's the direct ignition portion. For the indirect ignition, it's the ember landing around the house, in the wood mulch, on a plant, next to the wood fence. that ignites those items. And then those items in turn, either through direct flame contact or radiant heat, will ignite a vulnerable component of the house. And we've really determined from our research that we've conducted at our research center in Richburg, South Carolina, as well as during our post-fire analysis, that embers are the leading cause of structure loss during these high-intensity fires.
So how far can an ember travel given like, I guess, for lack of a better term, like ideal conditions, wind and such?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think you hit it right on the head there, that there are many factors that go into how far an ember can travel, like the size of the ember itself, what type of material it is, its weight, its shape, and then the heat of the fire that causes that ember to be lifted from where it starts, whatever item it starts from, into the air, and then the speed of the wind, and those all really play into how far it can travel. But I've heard of embers traveling really long distances, 6 miles, even further.
Well, and it's interesting because as fires become more intense, they can actually create their own weather and can potentially disperse those embers, quite a ways. So that makes it even for more dangerous situations. And kind of going back to an earlier thing you brought up, you had mentioned hardening your home and things of that nature. But I know a lot of folks are like, wanting to move into more scenic areas. So like these areas where there's a lot of high wildland urban interface. I know in Texas, for example, there was a class I took when I first started my PhD program, and the professor, he was asking a lot of us where we were from, and just trying to get to know each other a bit. And he asked me, and I mentioned I was from the Austin area, and he's like, "Oh, have you ever been out to Beat Caves, and which is a gorgeous area, and it's an area that I really, really like to travel through, pass through." But I had never given it much thought from the context that he was about to kind of introduce me to. And I was like, "Oh yeah, it's a gorgeous area." And he was, "Oh yeah, it absolutely is." But every time I pass through there, I can't think of it but like a tinderbox. And now, whenever I pass through, it's all I can think about because it's just like, I mean, these beautiful homes. I mean, multi-million-dollar homes, but I mean, nestled in the hills. I mean, just lined with cedar, with juniper, and I mean, juniper is super flammable. The Some of the chemicals that it has just incredibly flammable. It throws embers like crazy, and in the hills themselves, like you get the winds at the right time. The fires tend to move faster going uphill just because of the fire angle and things. I mean, it's just like a perfect storm of everything that could possibly go wrong. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, outside of California, Austin is number one in the country for the highest risk of fire danger, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So for these people who are wanting to move into these scenic areas and things like that, like what are some things that they should look for when, trying to purchase a house or a property, like things to look for safety and things of that nature?
Yeah, there's certainly a call for people who really like the outdoors to live in those areas, and that's certainly areas where there is the higher probability of a high intensity wildfire developing and your house being exposed to that. But we also see, as I mentioned earlier, these fires burn into very urban environments and leading to large structural loss too. So in those more rural areas, you really want to look at access as one of the first things, how easy it is for you to get out of your home to a safe location when the wildfire starts, as well as the emergency response resources, their ability to get in a timely manner and in a safe manner. And they're not having to traverse very dangerous areas like mid-slope roads and very dense vegetation just to get into areas where they need to go to protect life and property. And so that's some of the things. Next would be really preparing your house and your location for probably the inevitable wildfire that it's going to experience at some point in the life of that house. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really about reducing the exposure of all those things that surround the house by removing them off the property, relocating them further away, or making them more resilient to withstand the fire, and then looking at the structure itself. And when you have very vulnerable components to the structure that are combustible in particular, it really doesn't take too much exposure from something burning nearby for that item to ignite. So it's really looking at those components from the roof to the ground and mitigating those vulnerable areas of the structure. And then having a plan in order to get out, packing a go bag of all the things that are critical that you would need to take with you in a very short time frame with short notification from local law enforcement authorities and fire authorities that issue those evacuation notices, and heeding all those notices to evacuate in a timely manner when they're given. But really, you need to prepare your house in advance of the fire, because once the fire occurs, there's, in a lot of instances, not much time at all for you to react. Sometimes it's just being able to gather your go bag and a few items, get in your vehicle, and evacuate is about all the time that you have available. So you need to do all the wildfire preparedness actions in advance of these fires, and then evacuate safely, because these fires burn today. They're much different than when I was a young firefighter back in 1989. They are burning with much more severity, much more intensity and speed. And we've seen tragic, significant loss of life in Paradise, California, from the Camp Fire, Lahaina, during the Lahaina fire, and most recently in the LA wildfires. And so it's not the environment that you should be staying behind to defend your house in. It's the time to get out and let the all the great work that you did ahead of the start of the fire allow for that home to have the best chance of survival while this wildfire is burning through that area.
Some good information.
So you said something earlier about wildfires being inevitable, which, I mean, historically it rings true. I mean, Native Americans used wildfires in order, especially nomadic Indians, they would use wildfires, or they would find better hunting grounds and gathering grounds and stuff based on where wildfires had burned the previous season and previous years. So it's definitely is an inevitable thing, and historically times show that. So as our urban areas start to sprawl out more into the wilderness, obviously y'all's expertise is trying to find ways for the preparedness, make sure that we have less loss of life. But you said that the fires are seeming to be more intense. Do you know what the cause of that is?
I think there's many factors that are coming together here. I think climate change is one of those big factors. Fire suppression actions don't allow those fires to burn. And rightfully so. It's when you get that ignition, it's really controlling those unwanted fires. We don't want those fires that start either human. No, over 90% of the fire causes are human caused, and we want to extinguish those fires and keep them small so that they don't destroy our landscape ecosystems and our communities. So it's keeping those fires small. But then when we do that, it doesn't allow for that buildup of vegetation that would Mother Nature usually typically would take care of through lightning and natural fire, and our Native Americans would take care of as well through their tribal use of fire. And so it's led up to a buildup of really dense fuel within our landscape environment, and it sets the table really for fires to get established. And then under those critical conditions, when there's a drought and a high wind, then they could push that fire very quickly into an urban environment, leading to large structure loss.
Now I'd like to tell you about a couple of our sponsors. First, we have Bucked Up. When you're out in the wild, whether you're stalking a trophy buck, casting for that elusive bass, or trekking through rugged terrain, you need more than just grit. You need fuel that matches your passion for the outdoors. That's where Bucked Up energy drinks and supplements come in. Crafted for those who live life on the edge, Bucked Up offers a range of products designed to enhance your performance, endurance, and recovery. From the early morning hunts to the late night fishing trips, Bucked Up has your back. Use promo code WLO20 at checkout to receive 20% off your order. Explore their full range of products by clicking on the link in the description. Next, we have Foretold Coffee Company. Start your adventure with a brew as bold as the journey ahead. Foretold Coffee Company crafts ethically sourced small batch roast for those who find peace in the wild. Founded by Army veteran Joshua Sandoval, each cup reflects resilience, exploration, and the spirit of the outdoors. Whether it's the light Peruvian cocoa, the medium El Salvadoran bourbon, or the dark Mexican honey, each cup is perfect for the base camp mornings or fireside evenings. Subscribe to their monthly coffee club for 10% off and stay fueled for every expedition. To learn more, visit foretoldcoffeeco.com.
With the buildup of fuel over time, I imagine you get these massive fuel loads in it. It's, it can lead to these huge and intense wildfires. After a wildfire occurs, what would you suspect the fire return interval to be once a fuel load has been essentially just destroyed or burnt up?
Yeah, it really depends on the fuel type that was present beforehand, whether it was grass. I mean, grass will grow back the next year. If it was brush, it's going to take a few years. If it's timber, it's going to take much longer. And we've seen from these large destructive fires that there can be type conversion of what was there beforehand to what replaces that vegetation type after the fire. So it's really many factors that go into that.
That makes sense. I've seen that here. Here in Arkansas, they do prescribed burns on a lot of the national forest land and stuff like that. And it was always strange to me because you'd be in like a hardwood thicket where there's a lot of oaks and hickories and stuff like that around the area, and then they would do a controlled burn, and then the following year or the year following that, you would see longleaf pines coming up. And I was like, there wasn't even pines here to begin with. Where are they coming from? But I recently learned that there's certain species of trees that actually prefer fire, and they actually won't sprout until there's actually been a fire. So, yeah, I thought that was the craziest thing whenever I was like, there's no pines around here. They just did a burn, and now pine trees are coming out. I don't know, how'd that work?
Yeah, that prescribed fire and beneficial fire really impactful.
For sure. So obviously, Jose, and our podcast is based on wildlands and outdoors and conservation and things of that nature. So Jose has a lot more experience in prescribed burns than I do, but I've noticed whenever they're doing prescribed burns, they cut out a 5 to 10 foot edge of where they're going to be burning to, and that's where the fire break is. And so I didn't know embers could travel up to 6 miles away. So in urban areas, those fire breaks probably don't do as much as they would whenever they're doing a prescribed burn. But what are the most common conducive conditions for fires being started in urban areas, whether it be, leaf litter and gutters, or obviously we talked earlier about materials, fencing materials, things that are made. So the first 5 feet from the structure out, what are the most conducive things that y'all have noticed are the main cause of fire in urban areas?
Yeah, so those embers that are produced when the vegetation outside the community is burning can travel very long distances and over top of fuel reduction projects that abut the outer edge of the community, and are generally going to be the first order of the fire's entry into the community. And when those embers land, they can ignite fires. And as I mentioned earlier, through either directly igniting a component of the structure or igniting something that surrounds the structure that then ignites it. So there's many different paths that the embers can take to ignite something. So they can land on the roof, and if there's an accumulation of debris from the wind associated with the fire that accumulates on the house, and those embers will find those same areas and ignite that fine debris. Gutters is another typical location where debris tends to build up, and then embers find that location as well. Another one is at the base of where a vertical surface and a horizontal surface come together. So like a wall in the ground or a wall in the deck, where those intersections are, that's where debris also will blow in and accumulate. Entryways for both person doors as well as garage doors. Embers accumulate or debris accumulates in those areas, and then embers finds that as well and can ignite that material. And then that first 5 feet, we really have found during our research and especially during our post-fire analysis, that when you have combustible items in that first 5 feet, those embers can find that that material very easily, leading to its ignition. And at that point, when you have a fire right at the structure, it doesn't have to be a high intensity fire. It can be a very small fire. It just needs to find one vulnerability in the structure, like the siding that meets the ground. It burns right up and ignites the siding, or those embers accumulate up against the base of the wall, up against the siding, and then ignite the siding. So, in that particular, that first 5 feet is just so critical for ember protection. And here in California, where I live, we've termed it through legislation the ember resistant zone. That first 5 feet.
Oh, wow. That was going to be my next question, was what are common practices people can do in order to, you know, prepare that 5 feet to not be a conducive condition for a structure fire to start. But the fact that y'all have actually ran that through legislation is amazing.
Yeah, and it's really needs to be non-combustible, so nothing that's flammable in that area should be there, because the embers will just find it and ignite it. And even a fire that's burning outside of that area can burn right up to that 5 feet and then ignite those items in there and travel right to the edge of the house.
So you briefly mentioned earlier a research facility that you guys had. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, or IBHS, we are a nonprofit organization that conducts research on four perils: wind-driven rain, hail, and wildfire. And we look at the vulnerabilities that those perils present to a home or business, and what the vulnerabilities are to the structure from those four different perils. And in the case of wildfire, we can build a full size structure and then place it inside of our test chamber. And on the outside of the test chamber, we have a bank of 105 fans that can collectively blow up to
Oh,
135-mile-an-hour wind. And that wind travels down some concrete tunnels that narrow as they enter into our big 6-story concrete structure. And in the center of the concrete structure is a big turntable, and we can place about a 1,600 square foot structure on that turntable, and then orient that structure through the turning of the turntable to orient that structure to the bank of fans in any direction that we want. And then for wildfire, we can cast embers onto the building and see how the building responds as a system of components, just as it would experience a real life wildfire.
so using the research facility, obviously you guys have learned a lot more about how fire interacts with structures. Has there been any development of different materials that could be used to build houses because of the research that you guys have done? Or where has the research led to in terms of more wildfire preparedness for structures?
Yeah, so our research, both what we've done at the research center as well as our post fire analysis, we've really honed in on three things that once a fire enters into a community and really becomes established and igniting structures, and is just how easy it is for that fire to transition from just burning a few structures to destroying thousands of structures. And those variables are structure separation distance, or how closely structures are to each other, the connectivity of fuels. So if a one structure is on fire, can that structure then ignite a series of objects that provide a pathway for that fire to go through those series of objects to the next house downwind? And that could be like that structure igniting a shed on the property. The shed ignites a wood fence, and that wood fence, the fire travels along it right to the side of the next structure, igniting it. And then the last of the three variables is the materials that the home is made out of. And so we really focus on a type of material, not a particular, like a non-combustible type material, but there are many versions of non-combustible materials. You can have metal, you can have cement, as just a couple examples. So, and so that's really led to what one of the programs that we have created, the Wildfire Prepared Home Program. And it's a program that is voluntary that homeowners in certain states can apply to and go through mitigation steps and earn a designation from IBHS that is validation that they have taken the right steps to mitigate their risk, and opens doors with insurers to have conversations about home insurance and insurability. And it is a systems-based approach, because underneath these high-intensity wildfires, if you leave even just one vulnerability, even seemingly very small, it could be exploited by these wildfires and lead to the ignition of that item and then the loss of the house.
See, that makes sense. So, how would people go about getting through this certification process? Is there a website they can go to apply or see if it's offered in their state? Or
Yes, absolutely. They can go to wildfireprepared.org, and currently the program is available in Oregon, California, New Mexico, and Nevada. And we're looking to expand it out to other more wildfire-prone states, your typical Western states like Texas and Colorado and so forth. And but even if this program is currently not available in your state, the mitigation measures and actions that are put into the program are the actions that, through our research and post-fire analysis, and we've really determined that they significantly reduce the risk to your home. And so these are the right actions for homeowners to take. So we urge the homeowners to go to our wildfireprepared.org website, download the How to Prepare Your Home checklist, and it talks about the two different levels of designation that we offer and the requirements that are associated with each of those two levels. And the first level is wildfire prepared home, and sometimes you might hear it referred to as the base level. And it's really designed to protect a home from exposure to embers, that leading cause of home ignition. And it looks at all those components of the home that are most vulnerable from ember exposure, like the roof, gutters, vents, that bottom 6 inches of a vertical surface that I talked about earlier, where debris and embers can accumulate and ignite. And then that 5 feet of having nothing combustible out from the wall of the home, as well as other attachments, and then going out with further out to 30 feet with some additional requirements. And then the plus level designation builds upon the base level designation by requiring additional items. And those are the items that are most vulnerable that from the radiant heat and flames of the fire. So that would be your windows and eaves and siding and other components like that. And so when you've taken all the right mitigation steps, you can apply to the program, go through a validation process, come out on the other end with a designation in hand.
awesome. So no matter where they're at, they can go through the steps regardless of the fact that if their intention is to be certified or not.
Absolutely. These are right measures to take to prepare your house from these high intensity fires. And it's, even though we're not maybe in your state right now, we could be coming to your state soon. And if you get a jump start on taking these mitigation actions, when we enter into the state, it could be as simple as applying to the program and then completing the validation process and getting that designation. We're not powerless against these high intensity fires. There's absolutely mitigation actions that homeowners can take to significantly reduce the risk to their home, giving their home the best chance of survival, giving them the best chance of returning to a house that's still standing after these fires, and returning as quickly as possible to a sense of normalcy, a normal life, and helping the community at large withstand these types of fires. So we again urge people to go to our website, wildfireprepared.org, download that how-to checklist, print it off, walk around your house. Each house is unique in the materials that it was constructed with on the exterior of the home, the vegetation and its surrounding area, the topography, and so forth. And so walk around your home, compare it to the checklist, create a list of things that need to be mitigated, and then figure out on that list, what are items that I can do as a DIY type project that I'm capable of handling on my own, and then start working on mitigating those and checking those items off the list. And then for the items that maybe you need some financial assistance or a contractor to assist you with, then develop a plan of how you're going to go about checking those items off the list as well. And then go the distance. Don't just stop at the things that are DIY, and don't worry about the things that you may need some assistance with. Go the full distance. It's what's going to give your home the best chance of survival.
Thank you for that. I feel like that could be a good ending point. So we greatly appreciate your time and appreciate all the information. And for those of y'all that are listening to the end, definitely go check out. I'll have the links in the description. Make sure that your home is prepared in order to potentially have something to come back to if a wildfire does occur. And we'll catch y'all next time.
This has been Wildlife Outdoors. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook at Wildlife Outdoors and on Instagram at wild.life.outdoors. Let's go live life on the wild side.